Did you know that The Running Man didn't start with its final director? The production actually fired the first filmmaker. It happened after just 1 week of shooting. That's right. The iconic dystopian action flick, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, was almost a completely different movie. This was just one of many chaotic twists behind the scenes. The film was released in 1987. It presented a neon-soaked vision of the future. In this world, TV game shows feed on violence. Ratings rule society. Contestants must fight for their lives. At the time, the film was overshadowed by some of Schwarzenegger's other blockbusters, but over the years, it gained cult classic status. Fans praise it for its biting satire. Others admire its eerie prediction of reality TV obsessions. Buckle up. We're about to race through the lesser-known stories. These moments turned The Running Man into the adrenaline-fueled spectacle you can't forget. 1. Davis fired. Did you know that before The Running Man found its final directing hand in Paul Michael Glaser, the production went through a dramatic upheaval? The team fired Andrew Davis, who would later become famous for The Fugitive, just 1 week into filming. This abrupt creative pivot caused shockwaves across the entire cast and crew. Andrew Davis was known for his careful, methodical approach to action, but he clashed with producers who insisted on a more energetic, breakneck style. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger was taken aback. He had expected a certain structure to each day's shoot. When Davis walked out, the entire project entered a major crisis. Pre-arranged set pieces, stunts, and storyboards had to be re-evaluated over a single frenzied weekend. In the shuffle, some sets were dismantled, others were hastily reworked. The morale of the team hung by a thread. Paul Michael Glaser stepped in. He had minimal prep time to absorb the script's nuances. This last-minute switch forced Arnold and the rest of the cast to improvise more than usual. Ironically, that spontaneity ended up defining The Running Man. Though Schwarzenegger publicly called the firing a terrible decision, he later admitted something surprising. The film's frenetic, almost guerrilla style might not have emerged if Davis had stayed on board. 2. Loosely based on a Stephen King novella. The entire film's premise, a dystopian future where convicts must battle deadly stalkers on a bloodthirsty game show, comes from a Stephen King novella. The story, titled The Running Man, was written under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. Fans of the original text often do a double-take when comparing the two versions. King's novella is grim and introspective. The film, on the other hand, is explosive and neon-splattered. The novella took a more harrowing, cynical route. It followed an everyman protagonist who was desperate to survive a horrifying national pastime. In contrast, the 1987 adaptation embraced comedic one-liners, hyper-stylized violence, and full-on 80s flair. Screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza used the novella more as a springboard than a blueprint. Many bleak plotlines and downbeat endings were left out. They were replaced with quips, bigger guns, and a pumped-up Arnold hero who seemed genetically incapable of gloom. The result? A film that still carries an undercurrent of social commentary, especially about media exploitation, but one that never hesitates to lean on Schwarzenegger's signature brand of unstoppable action. 3. Arnold added one-liners to boost action with humor. Arnold Schwarzenegger was riding a wave of international stardom. He had just come off Commando, 1985, Raw Deal, 1986, and Predator, 1987. Taking on the role of Ben Richards allowed him to continue shaping his legacy as the unstoppable action titan of the decade. But this time, there was a slightly more satirical twist. The character of Ben Richards is a helicopter pilot framed by a corrupt system. He becomes a reluctant participant in the darkest game show imaginable. Schwarzenegger insisted the film include more of his trademark one-liners. Just imagine Commando or Predator without the pun-laced kills, and you'll understand why he was so adamant. Scenes were often rewritten on the fly. Many changes happened late at night to ensure that each intense confrontation ended with a zinger. Arnold believed that audiences expected a comedic release after savage fights. This formula had already proven successful for him. That approach helped The Running Man stand out from the more serious sci-fi flicks of the era. It delivered not just violence, but entertainment tinged with humor. 4. Mick Fleetwood brought quirky charm as the rebel leader. Mick Fleetwood, rock legend and co-founder of Fleetwood Mac, turned heads when he appeared in the film. He played a character named Mick, a resistance leader who despised the totalitarian ICS network. Why cast a musician with limited acting experience in such a pivotal role? The production team saw a chance to bring offbeat authenticity to the underground movement. Mick Fleetwood had a quirky gravitas that typical Hollywood actors didn't offer. On set, he noticed surprising parallels between two worlds, navigating the music industry's backstabbing politics and leading a cinematic rebellion in a dystopian future. He often joked that dealing with manipulative producers in real life had prepared him for the ICS's scheming showrunners in the script. Meanwhile, castmates teased him about writing a new album called Running from the Man. Although his role on screen was relatively small, it left an unforgettable impression. That impact came largely from the bizarre real-world resonance behind the casting. 5. Alonso faced real injuries to deliver a raw performance. Maria Conchita. Alonso, cast as Amber Mendez, had her own hurdles to overcome. She was already known for playing strong-willed characters, but The Running Man demanded extreme physicality. Amber begins the story as a skeptical civilian. Over time, she becomes just as much a fugitive as Ben Richards. The production chaos, caused by the director swap, led to frequent last-minute changes in her action scenes. She recalled one instance in particular. An unexpected script revision required her to sprint through a corridor rigged with explosives. There was no time for rehearsal. During the take, she nearly slipped. The fall could have sent her crashing face-first onto concrete. That near accident triggered a surge of real fear. Ironically, it helped her performance. When the cameras rolled, Amber's desperation looked painfully authentic. Alonso also strained a tendon in her right arm. It happened during a scene where she struggled with a security guard. Despite the bruises and physical toll, she later spoke fondly about the experience. She believed that the raw tension helped her deliver a more believable portrayal of a woman forced to adapt to life-or-death stakes overnight. Sixth Ventura improvised his way into scene-stealing glory. Jesse "the Body" Ventura, a flamboyant professional wrestler who would later become the governor of Minnesota, stepped into the role of Captain Freedom. He played a retired stalker, idolized by the bloodthirsty TV audience. Decked out in spandex and brandishing an ego the size of the ICS broadcast tower, Ventura's character symbolized the old guard of game show brutality. But now, Captain Freedom began to question the rising tide of sensationalism. Interestingly, Ventura improvised much of Captain Freedom's on-screen bravado. Producers found his wrestling persona so entertaining that they gave him free rein to ham it up. One day, Ventura launched into a 2-minute monologue. He ranted about the virtues of honorable combat, using flamboyant gestures and primal growls. Arnold Schwarzenegger, his longtime friend from their bodybuilding and wrestling crossover days, egged him on from off-camera. He even tossed in occasional suggestions for lines or comedic beats. The result was a dynamic contrast. Schwarzenegger's stoic heroism played perfectly against Ventura's bombastic rants. Their chemistry delivered comedic gold, especially for viewers who knew their real-life backgrounds in muscle-bound showmanship. 7. Clashing visions created a chaotic but stylish game world. The film's so-called game zones originally had a vastly different aesthetic in the early storyboards. Director Andrew Davis had a darker vision. He wanted them to feel like crumbling cityscapes, society's poorest districts, walled off for televised slaughter. But that vision proved too expensive to realize fully. Then came Paul Michael Glaser. He brought a completely different approach. Glaser favored a futuristic, neon-infused look, something like a day-glow labyrinth. To achieve this, the team repurposed existing warehouse spaces. They dressed them with lurid lighting, metallic graffiti, and leftover set pieces from other productions. The result was an eerie, carnival-like aura. This shift also required reworks of matte paintings and set expansions. That's why some shots show sprawling, post-apocalyptic cityscapes. Others feature narrower, almost Tron-like corridors. It's the direct result of two conflicting visions colliding mid-production. The outcome is a patchwork environment. Though inconsistent, it exudes a certain stylish mania, perfectly suited to the film's underlying satire. 8. Tanaka stayed in character, making Sub-Zero truly intimidating. Sub-Zero, the deadly hockey-themed stalker, is one of the film's most memorable antagonists. He was portrayed by professional wrestler and martial artist Professor Toru Tanaka. On set, Tanaka took the Sub-Zero identity very seriously. He would roam around in costume, brandishing his bladed hockey stick in menacing silence. Extras playing the game show audience confessed something unusual. Tanaka's stoic glare genuinely freaked them out. He rarely smiled or broke character. Even in group dining areas, he stayed in character. He'd quietly stand off to the side, still in part of his outfit, sipping tea, as though plotting an ambush. The production valued his method approach. It added authenticity. But for some, it was intimidating. Schwarzenegger, always game for a challenge, tried to tease Tanaka out of character. He dared him to crack. Legend has it, Tanaka would only grunt in response. That fueled the sense that Sub-Zero might leap into action at any moment, even off-camera. 9th, opera-singing Dynamo was powerful, glitchy, and unforgettable. Another showstopper among the stalkers was Dynamo. He was played by the late Erland Van Lith. Van Lith wasn't just an actor, he was an actual opera singer. He once performed at the Metropolitan Opera. Off-camera, he was a gentle giant, but on screen he became terrifying, an electricity-wielding maniac who belted out opera lines while frying his prey. Dynamo's elaborate LED-lit suit caused endless technical issues. Wires shorted out. Batteries died mid-scene. The weight of the gear forced Van Lith to limit his movements. To compensate, the costume department tweaked the design daily. Castmates recalled hearing comedic curses from the stunt coordinator every time the suit failed again. Ironically, those malfunctions added to Dynamo's character. On paper, he seemed unstoppable with his electric powers, but in practice, he was an opera singer trapped in a glitchy disco ball suit that squeaked when he walked. Van Lith embraced the comedic potential. He delivered a bizarre blend of high-culture arias and savage violence. 10. Faltermeyer's synth score became iconic 80s dystopian flair. Harold Faltermeyer, the composer behind iconic 80s soundtracks like Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun, was tasked with giving The Running Man its musical pulse. Director Paul Michael Glaser asked for a futuristic vibe, but he also wanted it sprinkled with pop flair. The result was a synth-laden score. It set an otherworldly tone that bridged the gap between over-the-top action and social satire. Faltermeyer's throbbing beats added intensity. Each kill or chase scene came with an adrenaline rush. Interestingly, Faltermeyer nearly declined the project. He had scheduling conflicts, but after seeing early concept art, he changed his mind. He felt the flamboyant production design deserved his signature brand of electronic bombast. The synergy was undeniable. Neon visuals, Schwarzenegger's unstoppable presence, and Faltermeyer's pulsating synth created a time capsule of 1980s cool. Even decades later, fans still talk about it. The opening notes alone conjure images of a dystopian game show where life hangs by ratings. 11. Contestant suits blended function with toned-down sci-fi flair. Costuming for the Running Man, contestants required a delicate balance. The suits needed to look functional, like real athletic gear, but still include a sci-fi flourish. They were constructed out of specialized spandex with reinforced stitching. The suits had to endure strenuous stunt work. Arnold's suit, in particular, needed multiple layers. His intense fight choreography demanded extra durability. Yet even with such care, the fabric often tore. Mid-lunge or mid-fall, a seam might split. Production had to stop until a costumer could patch it up. The design team also added subtle color accents for each character. This helped distinguish them visually. Early sketches showed a different direction. Designers considered adding sponsor logos, like a race car driver's uniform. The idea was to emphasize corporate infiltration in daily life. However, that concept was later dropped. The team feared it might overshadow the central ICS brand. Production photos from test shoots reveal an alternate version. Some suits were plastered with fictional brand names, suggesting a more comedic tone. That version was ultimately toned down in the final film. 12. Game show icon Dawson nailed Satire as the ruthless host. One stroke of genius was casting Richard Dawson as Damon Killian. Dawson was a real-world game show host, best known for Family Feud. In the film, he played the smooth-talking, morally bankrupt ringmaster of the entire bloodbath. Dawson based his performance partly on an exaggerated version of himself. He slipped into the role with uncanny ease. He greeted extras with his signature game show charm, even as he plotted how to sacrifice contestants for ratings. On set, Dawson reportedly made a specific request. He demanded a podium just like the one on Family Feud. The team reconfigured it to suit ICS's grand stage. Between takes, he often slipped into real game show banter. This made people laugh, but also unsettled some. His ability to blend comedic warmth with cold exploitation was eerie. In an unexpected twist, this casting choice created extra satire. The comedic synergy of having a beloved TV figure orchestrate televised murder added depth. Viewers immediately saw the irony. The man who once made families guess survey answers now oversaw a lethal spectacle. 13. Unscripted crowd chants made the satire feel disturbingly real. Much of the crowd chatter in the ICS broadcast segments was unscripted. This included moments where audience members voted on which stalker might kill next. Director Paul Michael Glazer invited local LA extras to participate. He encouraged them to wear outlandish outfits and ad-lib their reactions as if they were truly cheering on a violent competition. Freed from rigid dialogue, many improvised lines on the spot. Some of those ad-libs made it into the final cut. Phrases like, "We want buzzsaw," or "Give me Sub-Zero any day," spontaneously erupted from the stands. The result feels jarringly authentic. It captures a society dangerously invested in high-stakes violence as casual entertainment. The manic energy from these ordinary citizens adds a chilling layer. It underscores the film's not-so-subtle commentary on how easily an audience can be swayed by spectacle. Some extras became deeply immersed in the role. A few even left the set feeling unnerved, realizing how quickly they adapted to cheering for fictional bloodshed. 14. A set malfunction nearly hit Arnold during Sub-Zero's fight. Sub-Zero's hockey rink showdown led to one of the film's scariest near accidents. Part of the set included collapsible walls. These were meant to break away during a fight sequence. Mid-scene, a structural cable snapped. A large partition suddenly swung toward Schwarzenegger. Thanks to quick reflexes and a crew member's shouted warning, he dodged just in time. The moment terrified the production team. They immediately re-engineered that portion of the set to prevent any repeat accidents. Schwarzenegger, known for his stoic calm, reportedly shrugged it off. Once he confirmed no one was hurt, he resumed filming. Still, an undertone of caution lingered for the rest of the day. It served as a stark reminder. Big stunts with heavy set pieces carry real risks. No matter how many comedic one-liners or theatrical kills appear on screen, the danger behind the scenes is always real. 15th ICS sets reused props from classic sci-fi for budget and homage. ICS's control rooms, buzzing with futuristic monitors and blinking gadgets, weren't built entirely from scratch. Many parts were assembled from leftover props used in other iconic sci-fi movies. Savvy set decorators spotted opportunities. They repurposed items from Blade Runner 2010, The Year We Make Contact, and even the Buck Rogers TV show. These pieces were repainted, rearranged, and integrated to create a high-tech broadcast environment. This thrifty approach saved money, but it also served as a subtle homage to the broader sci-fi legacy of the 70s and 80s. Look closely, and you might catch the details. A terminal once used in 2010 now shows an ICS logo. A familiar monitor might have appeared in Blade Runner. This kind of inventive recycling was typical for mid-budget action flicks. Every dime had to stretch to cover stunts, star salaries, and flashy effects. The final look creates a unique vibe. It feels futuristic, yet oddly familiar. That's part of the film's satirical edge. Everything we see is just a glossy rebrand of entertainment we've already consumed. 16. Gritty LA warehouse scenes added raw realism to the rebellion. Downtown Los Angeles served as the backdrop for the underground resistance hideout. The location was a cavernous warehouse. It featured damp corridors, flickering fluorescent lights, and questionable structural integrity. Filming there became an exercise in cautious navigation. Maria Conchita Alonso recalled how the cast had to watch their steps. They had to step over real rubble and avoid rusting metal beams. At one point, the entire building experienced a power hiccup. The lights went out, plunging everyone into darkness. As crew members scrambled to restore power, the cast made jokes. They said it felt like living through a real Running Man scenario, lost in a dark industrial labyrinth. Filming in that setting added authenticity. The rebellious energy on screen felt more grounded. The gritty location stood in sharp contrast to ICS's polished high-tech sets. It reminded viewers of the film's deeper message. Society's oppressed are forced to hide in crumbling corners, while the privileged bask under studio lights. 17. Glazer's fast-paced style added energy but hurt continuity. Paul Michael Glazer's directorial method was lightning quick. It resembled a TV approach, grabbing multiple angles in rapid succession. There was little time for overthinking. Some have called it guerrilla filmmaking. But unlike true indie projects, this film had the budget of a mid-tier Hollywood production. Schwarzenegger found the pace jarring at first. He had worked with directors like John Milius and James Cameron, filmmakers who meticulously planned every shot. Under Glazer, scenes sometimes wrapped after just 3 or 4 takes, even if the cast felt they were still warming up. In interviews, Schwarzenegger admitted this forced him to adapt. He had to deliver a more intuitive performance. If the camera captured a take with raw spontaneity, even if it wasn't perfect, they moved on. Ironically, this approach mirrored the show-within-a-show dynamic. Just like ICS's live broadcasts, there was no going back to fix a flubbed moment. The energy soared, but continuity sometimes suffered. Some viewers can spot minor visual inconsistencies, yet those small flaws often enhance the film's hyper-real chaos. 18. Arnold slimmed down slightly to play a more normal hero. Right after finishing Predator, Schwarzenegger was still in prime physical shape, but for The Running Man, he intentionally slimmed down a bit to play Ben Richards. He felt that a helicopter pilot wouldn't have the same monstrous build as his character Dutch from Predator. Still, the idea of Arnold looking less muscular is relative. He remained an imposing figure, far beyond the typical action star. The production mostly glossed over the question. No one explained how an average pilot ended up so jacked. But this was the '80s, and the film was already full of improbable elements. So they let the camera roll. What they captured was a hero who soared beyond normal human athleticism. This slight shift in physique was important to Arnold. He wanted to differentiate Ben Richards from the unstoppable soldier who fought an alien in the jungle. He aimed to portray a normal citizen, someone forced to become a soldier out of necessity. Normal, of course, still meant a chiseled, intimidating machine by any standard measure. 19. Paula Abdul choreographed the film's futuristic, edgy dances. Paula Abdul's presence behind the scenes might surprise fans. At the time, she was an up-and-coming choreographer and singer. She had been working on music videos for Janet Jackson. Producers of The Running Man hired her to design the ICS cheerleaders' dance routines. They wanted a mix of futuristic edge and traditional pom-pom pep. Abdul faced a unique challenge. She had to choreograph routines that looked both seductive and vaguely menacing to match the film's violent tone. She experimented with robotic arm movements, fast spins, and stylized leaps. The goal was to evoke an otherworldly vibe. The result is a small detail that many viewers might overlook. But those group dances add to the film's game show mania. They carry an MTV-infused style that heightens the absurdity. Abdul later said that no other job put her dancers so close to prop blood and flamboyant costumes. For her, The Running Man was a bizarre, but memorable, stepping stone on the path to becoming a pop star. 20th. Killian's explosive death replaced a moral ending for bigger payoff. The confrontation with Damon Killian in the film's climax went through several rewrites. In the original drafts, Killian delivered a final monologue. He condemned the public's thirst for brutality and issued a forced apology. Ben Richards, in turn, rejected it. But test audiences weren't satisfied. They felt a moral scolding wasn't enough. They wanted a bigger payoff, something worthy of an '80s action finale. That's when the ejection chair stunt was born. The production team came up with a new ending. Killian would be launched down a tube by his own system, just like the contestants he once sent to their deaths. He would be propelled into a violent, explosive end. It was ironic and theatrical. The reimagined ending tested through the roof. Preview audiences erupted in applause. Watching Killian undone by his own monstrous creation hit the perfect note. It cemented the film's tone, comedic, cynical, and just over the top enough. In the end, the very show he used to kill others turned on him. 21. Arnold added dark humor to balance the film's intense tone. Even with the chaotic schedule, Arnold managed to sneak comedic morsels into the film. One example was the ICS Christmas tree gag. It was shot as a spur-of-the-moment insert. Arnold pushed for these subtle comedic beats. He believed they would contrast nicely with the film's heavier dystopian themes. It also gave him a chance to show a different side of Ben Richards, a man who could crack a deadpan wisecrack, even in horrific situations. During post-production, some of these asides were trimmed. The editors wanted to keep the tension high. Still, enough moments remained to showcase Schwarzenegger's range. That tension between gore-laced action and wry humor became a hallmark of many 1980s blockbusters. The Running Man embraced that identity, and it's one reason fans still revisit the film with nostalgic zeal. 22. Scrapped stalker trading cards became rare collector legends. At one point, the producers considered releasing official Stalkers trading cards. It was a gimmick meant for fans to collect pictures and stats for Sub-Zero, Buzzsaw, Fireball, Dynamo, and Captain Freedom. Early mock-ups featured comedic bios. They described each stalker's skill set, kill count, and personal motto. One marketing pitch went even further. It proposed in-universe commercials for the cards, meant to appear inside the film itself. This would add extra meta layers to the satire. The idea, however, never reached fruition. Budget constraints and last-minute marketing shifts shut it down. Still, a handful of prototypes do exist. Among die-hard collectors of rare movie merchandise, these cards are considered holy grails. Rumors persist that a few sets were produced for test giveaways. They rarely surface, which only adds to their mystique. In the end, they remain an imaginary tie-in to an imaginary sport, fittingly absurd for a film like The Running Man. 23 FCC backlash ironically boosted the film's media satire. The film's portrayal of a tyrannical media empire ruffled real-world feathers at the time. The FCC raised concerns. They questioned whether The Running Man was stoking public distrust of network television. Some critics argued the film fueled conspiracy theories. They believed it suggested mainstream media could orchestrate violence for entertainment. As often happens, the negative publicity worked in the film's favor. It sparked curiosity among viewers who might have otherwise dismissed it as just another action flick. In interviews, Arnold Schwarzenegger brushed off the criticism. He called it fictional exaggeration. Privately, though, the producers found the situation ironic and amusing. They felt it validated their message. After all, the film's core premise was about sensational scandal-boosting ratings. The FCC's condemnation mirrored that exact dynamic. Just like the ICS network, controversy fed attention, and attention fed bigger crowds. 24. Arnold and Ventura dreamed up a buddy cop comedy that never happened. On set, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura, both muscle-bound alpha personalities, found time to brainstorm. They toyed with the idea of doing a buddy cop comedy. The concept involved them playing ironically mismatched partners investigating a comedic caper. They even considered weaving in their real-life backgrounds in bodybuilding and wrestling. The pitch circulated among a few producers, but it never gained serious traction. Years later, the two did reconnect on screen. In Batman and Robin, 1997, Schwarzenegger played Mr. Freeze. Ventura had a brief cameo as an Arkham Asylum guard. It was a reunion, but definitely not the buddy comedy they once imagined. In hindsight, fans can't help but wonder. That unrealized project might have delivered a glorious slice of late 80s or early 90s action comedy. 25. The film narrowly avoided an X rating by blending gore with humor. The Running Man earned a notorious R rating, but it nearly received something stricter. The MPAA initially threatened the film with an X rating. Scenes like Buzzsaw's over-the-top demise came dangerously close to crossing the line with graphic content. To avoid escalation, the filmmakers added a few comedic quips and made minimal re-edits. That was just enough to hold the R. Even so, the final cut still features plenty of severed limbs and blood sprays, more than enough to please 80s gore enthusiasts. One of the toned-down moments was a more explicit shot. It showed the chainsaw embedded in Buzzsaw's torso. The MPAA flagged it as excessive. Screenwriter Stephen D'Souza and director Paul Michael Glazer pushed back. They fought to keep as much spectacle as possible. To them, the film's entire brand relied on savage, outrageous set pieces. In the end, they learned the fine art of appeasing the censors. Cut a few frames. Add a well-timed joke. The audience walks away seeing it as playful hyper-violence instead of gratuitous gore. 26. Stunt double Gary Combs nailed Arnold's iconic stride. Legendary stunt coordinator Gary Combs served as Schwarzenegger's double for the film's most precarious takes. These were moments that even Arnold wasn't entirely comfortable performing. Combs had a vaguely similar build, though not as famously muscular. But what he perfected was posture and stride. His work showed best in wide shots. That's where we see Ben Richards sprinting or scaling scaffolding. Interestingly, Combs admitted something surprising. Emulating Schwarzenegger's walk was harder than most of the stunts. He carefully studied Arnold's movements, how he planted each foot, how he swung his arms with that signature borderline swagger. No matter how dangerous the scene, matching that distinctive strut was top priority. Without it, the illusion would fall apart. The result? Most fans never notice when it's Combs running through flying debris. It's a testament to well-executed stunt doubling, done in an era before digital face swaps made things easier. 27. Initially overlooked, the film grew into a cult classic with eerie relevance. Released in 1987, The Running Man earned a moderate box office return. It was overshadowed by Schwarzenegger's earlier hits, like Predator and the unstoppable success of The Terminator. Critics were divided. Some praised it as a biting commentary on reality TV and state propaganda. Others dismissed it as just more mindless 80s carnage, this time drenched in neon lights and one-liners. But over time, the film found a cult following. Home video sales flourished. Cable TV reruns introduced the movie to a younger audience. Many viewers began to recognize the film's eerie foresight. Damon Killian's manipulative broadcast tactics began to echo real-world trends. The rise of reality competitions made The Running Man feel more relevant than ever. What began as an overshadowed Schwarzenegger vehicle evolved into something more, a prescient cultural artifact. 28. The film's satire now feels eerily close to reality. The film's uncanny parallels to modern-day reality, shows, and fake news sensationalism have sparked renewed interest. In countless think pieces, cultural commentators point out the film's eerie foresight. The Running Man predicted the public's hunger for spectacle. It foresaw the merging of entertainment with borderline cruelty. It also highlighted society's willingness to scapegoat the powerless for mass amusement. Some see clear reflections of modern social media frenzies, fans cheering for meltdown videos, viral humiliations going mainstream. In later interviews, Schwarzenegger reflected on these parallels. He mused about how close we might be to a real-life version of The Running Man. If technology advanced to make it possible, would the public resist, or would they tune in? That question haunts the film's legacy. Scenes that once felt absurd, like on-the-spot phone voting for lethal outcomes, now seem uncomfortably feasible, especially in today's hyper-connected, digital-first world. 29. Behind the chaos, cast camaraderie kept spirits high. Despite all the chaos often mentioned, many cast members fondly remember the camaraderie behind the scenes. The sets might have been haphazard, but between intense shoot days, the cast would unwind together, often over coffee. They used collective gallows humor to release the tension. Maria Conchita Alonso recalled Arnold's daily pranks. He would leave silly notes on her trailer door. Sometimes he'd wink at her right before an intense fight scene. Richard Dawson, ever the showman, also joined in the fun. He occasionally entertained the extras with old Family Feud routines. It helped bridge the gap between the real crowd and the film's fictional ICS audience. These off-duty moments kept morale from collapsing under the film's breakneck schedule. Even though they were spinning a violent dystopian tale, the cast found peace in simple joys, shared laughter, celebratory toasts after a long day, and cheers when a demanding stunt wrapped safely. 30. A chaotic production birthed a lasting satire on media and violence. Looking back, The Running Man stands as a prime example of chaotic production. Ironically, that chaos mirrored the film's own subject matter. There was a scramble for directorial control, a frantic chase to piece together sets, a swirling synergy of cameo-like roles from big personalities. In many ways, everything behind the scenes felt like a game show in itself. Yet out of that whirlwind came a film that still resonates decades later. Fans celebrate it not only for its kill or be killed action, but also for its sharp commentary. It lumps together corporate media, power-hungry executives, and a desensitized public into one volatile package. The result is more than just an action flick. It's an adrenaline-fueled piece of pop culture, one that explores what happens when ratings outweigh empathy and when morality steps aside for spectacle. As the cameras stopped rolling and the sets were struck, each key player walked away with something lasting. Schwarzenegger carried forward valuable lessons, especially about adaptability in chaotic circumstances. Maria Conchita Alonso overcame raw physical demands. Her performance added an authenticity that rose above the typical 80s love interest role. Paul Michael Glaser emerged with a directorial calling card. It wasn't the most polished, but it delivered raw momentum. And for viewers, The Running Man became something more than just another action movie. It left behind a cinematic time capsule filled with big hair, bigger muscles, synth-laden soundscapes, and wild imagination. What felt absurd in 1987 now feels disturbingly prophetic in the age of streaming and algorithm-driven entertainment. Whether you watch it for the comedic brutality, the odd one-liners from Schwarzenegger, or the socio-political subtext about media exploitation, it's hard to deny the film's staying power. In a society inching closer to the commodification of real tragedy, where entire channels thrive on sensational shock value, maybe The Running Man was simply ahead of its time. It raises a chilling question. If we keep feeding the beast of spectacle, how long before we see a real ICS, a real stalker, a real-life Sub-Zero forging showbiz from carnage? That possibility feels both horrifying and strangely plausible. It's a reminder of why this manic, neon-soaked shoot-'em-up still sparks debate, laughter, and a creeping sense of déjà vu. Are we really so different from Damon Killian's audience, cheering for destruction from the comfort of our couches? The film wants us to ask that question. Every time we tune in to something that merges entertainment with human peril. And as we weigh that question, the film leaves us with one final biting reminder. It's all about ratings, baby.